Hey guys, it's Caitlin, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the questions that I ask when I get a placement call. Um, in my opinion, you should ask as many questions as possible. Even if placement doesn't know the answer, at least you asked and you tried. That usually, if a child is coming straight from their home, they don't usually have as much information as if a child was like moving placements from like another foster home or something like that, where they might have more information. So when you get the call, usually they'll say something along the lines of, "Hey, Miss Roca, I was just wondering if you could help us out with a 13-year-old girl." So right there, that gives you the age and if it's a boy or girl. So if you have only a certain number of rooms and they've already been divided, you can say, yes or no. For example, we have two bedrooms, two children's bedrooms. They both have girls. They have a teenage girl and they have a toddler girl. So when I get calls for teenage boys, it's an obvious no, because you can't keep boys and girls together unless they are under a certain age and siblings. So right away, I can't help anybody with that because of my house setup situation. So usually then I'll just stop them right there and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't have a bed. I have two girls." Something like that. That way they don't waste their time and they can move on to the next family. So if it is a case that I think that I might be able to help with, I always ask for the county, and if they know what schools the child is in school age, what school they go to. Because a child can live in your county, but their school could still be like 30 minutes away, which is what our current placement was like. She was in Lake County, so that would make it easy for court. And, if there was visitation involved, it would be a little bit closer for that. But school was still 30 minutes away. So that's just something that you might want to ask, is what county they're in, what school they go to, what their visitation is like, if they have anything set up, if it's long term or if it's short term, if the children are on any medication. Are you willing to take a child who's in a wheelchair or who is blind or deaf or anything like that? Sometimes they'll have a medical case that is not severe and can still be placed in a regular home. I have not gotten a call like that, but I have seen that. So that's something also, And these are kind of already things that you ask yourself when you're getting licensed. But the thing about placement is that they are going to call no matter what. They will call you with cases you cannot take or you don't want to take. And that's just, they're just trying to get that child placed as quickly as possible, as soon, And if they have to call every single person in the foster care book, that's what they're going to do, because they're trying to find a secure placement. So I mentioned short-term, long-term. Another thing that you want to ask for, I would say any child, maybe with the exception of a baby. I haven't taken a baby, so I don't know, is if they have a safety plan. That is something to consider, especially if you have other children in your home. So a safety plan is usually put into place with children who are can harm themselves or another person. So we had a placement. I did not think to ask this, but for example, when she came to live with us, she had to have all of her razors locked. Like, she couldn't have her like regular shaving razor. She had to ask when she wanted to shave. And you want to ask things like, how does this child interact with other children? And like I said, placement might not know, but they might. So you just ask all your questions. You get as much information as possible. That way you can make the best decision on if you're going to take that case. You want to ask, like I said, how they interact with other children. Some kids do not interact well with other children. One of my placements, even though she was a teenager, when she moved, I told her case manager that I thought she would benefit from being in a home where she was the only child, because she really competed with Addison and for attention, and she would act out in big ways so that all the attention was on her, and it didn't matter if it was positive. A lot of times it was negative. So that's something you might want to ask. They might, like I said, they might not know, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And then I'm trying to think. So if a child's transferring from another foster home to your home, I would most definitely ask why they're being moved, because generally that's saying that there was a problem with them and the other family. And you are going to want to know those, because sometimes it can just be where the family isn't a good match for the child, or you know what I'm saying? Like one of our placements, she came from a family that had, I think, unrealistic expectations of her and how she should act. They, I think, were looking for a teenager who was going to be so grateful they were moved into their home, and wanted this happy adoption story. And the reality is she didn't want to be adopted, and they were kind of forcing her to live in this mold where she didn't want to live. And that dropping unrealistic expectations is like a whole video, but you know what I mean? So that wasn't necessarily a big, there were some other things involved, but I just feel like they wanted her to be this perfect human that was just like jumping for joy, like, oh my God, you're my savior. And they didn't, that was wrong of them. So, in my opinion. I'm trying to think. Another question you're going to want to ask is, when is the child coming? Sometimes it can be a couple days. Sometimes they have to set up, various plans. Like, I think I got a call and I picked her up like 3 days later, one of my placements. So, and when someone tells you something, also here's a tip. If they say, we're going to drop her off Monday morning, don't necessarily just write that in stone. It has happened to me where they've told us one time and it's literally been 12 hours later and the child finally showed up at my house. So it's like, it's very unpredictable. And that's probably one of the frustrating parts of being a foster parent, is even when you ask all the questions or do all the steps, sometimes things just don't follow through, or they're not true. Like with one of my placements, they told me she was 14 and she was 16. I'm like, how do you mess that up? She's 16. That's 2 whole years difference. And a lot of it, I think, is just lack of communication. With that placement, she had moved so frequently that I think just information wasn't getting back to placement. So I feel like maybe they gave me the best information that they had that they could, because it was just all over with that case. But then the other placement that we had, everything they said about her was accurate. So, it's just, there is a communication problem in the foster care system. And as a foster parent, one of your jobs is to help clear that up. You need to be sure to have good communication with your caseworkers, with the GALs, with your licensing specialists. Don't let a situation get out of hand. My caseworkers know everything about my children. That's the fact. This is kind of a tangent, but if my any little bump, bruise, anything, that goes right to I'll for real just be like, do you want me to fill out an incident report? Because I'm not going to get a case turned on me because of my lack of communication. Like, a lot of things can be avoided. And when we were having a lot of problems with running away or trouble in school, I told that case manager, every single time. You know, they knew everything about that case, and the same is with the case now. So those are my main questions that I ask. I'll probably just leave the list in the description box. That way, if you just want to like copy, paste, print out, that might be helpful for you. But yeah, I don't think that you can't ask placement anything. They are there to help you make the best decision. And I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I will see you in my next video.